in Flower Mound. Yes. And then we have Mary Radspinner from, Mary, you officially in Cyprus, or Mary is muted?
Yeah. Well, that's because I sneeze and cough a lot, and I try not to interrupt.
Yeah. By the way, guys, I may mute myself because I'm still dealing with some bronchial stuff from a cold a couple of weeks ago. So Mary, tell us, where is Cyprus?
Cyprus is unincorporated, but there's probably 1 million people, and it's just growing like crazy, and it's sad.
She's about 45 minutes from the center of Houston in the northwest. Yeah, it's not country anymore. It used to be country. Yeah.
Just to be able to see the stars, it was wonderful. And
yeah, but it's very lots of subdivisions and strip centers and stuff. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the first lesson that you teach, your first harp lesson that you're teaching to a student. And we're going to talk briefly about some business matters, but we have done 2 previous sessions on harp teaching, harp music, harp studio business. And then we're going to spend more time about what we actually teach in the books and some hand position stuff. Just some things, the notes I write down. I know some teachers offer a first trial lesson for free, like a 25-minute lesson. I know some teachers invite the parent of a small child to come and observe the lesson without their child observe another student's lesson. And of course, that's with permission of that student and their parents. But there's another thing: if you have a student transfer into your studio from a teacher in your area, it really is very important that somehow you can communicate with that previous teacher, because there's some ethical things, but also you just want to know, any details. And I mean, I've had students transfer, the teacher has contacted me, would you like to, will you take over the student? And I've only gone so far, and maybe they need to focus on this, that, or the other. So Kimberly, would you like to discuss anything about business, anything along those lines?
Well, I usually do offer a complimentary, I call it an assessment, or the first lesson. If they've had any music background at all, then I will usually call it an assessment. They can play, if they've had piano lessons and they want to bring something from their piano book and play that for me, just to get an idea of what they're doing, but just have a chance to get to know them. I do an introduction to the harp with them, so that they're sitting down behind the harp. If they are renting from me as well, that's when if I have more than one rental harp available, then we'll try and see which one would fit or accommodate them. And then I usually end that with, if you'd like to go ahead and sign up or continue, I give my policy sheet to the parent, and usually they'll say, well, let's go ahead and schedule something. But I always give them, I try not to make an assumption, and give them a chance, because sometimes, they want to talk to their spouse or their child a little bit, how were you comfortable, that type of thing, before saying, okay, and which time slot would you like to sign up for? I'll say, I'll just wait to hear from you, and would look forward to working with your child. So that's what I usually do. And for adults as well, if they're coming as a new student, whether it's from somebody else, I just like to have that first chance to meet with them and connect with them. And I think it's a good investment.
Yeah, also, the parent or the adult student could be auditioning other teachers. Mm-hmm. And so, it's you don't need to do a hard sell, give me your money right now. We don't need to do that, of course. Mary, do you have any things along the business line that we've been discussing right now?
Not really, but I always do give a first free lesson. And I don't know if any of you have ever, sometimes the parents and the siblings come in for the first free lesson. I don't know about any of you, but I really am much more comfortable when the family is not in the room with me. I'm much more comfortable one-on-one with the student. And then there was one student that I had a free lesson with, and I really didn't want to have that student. And as it turned out, that it was not a good match. And I was not intuitive enough to say to the mom, this is not going to work. So I would like to ask other people what they would do in that situation.
So anybody, yes, Stephanie.
It's been my experience so far over several years that when I was so frustrated with a student that I was about to fire them, they quit. So the feeling must have been mutual. And even when I had a meeting once with a mom and daughter who had been both studying with another local teacher, and I met with them, and the mom was so high strung and so set in her ways. She said, I do not bother teaching us technique because it makes no difference. 2 years down the road, it makes no difference. And I'm kind of thinking like, I'm not sure that I can teach someone harp without addressing. But anyway, they emailed me and said that I was, for various complicated reasons, they emailed me and said I was not what they had in mind at all. But so far I've been lucky that it's been very mutual.
I had a colleague who was teaching a teenager, youngish teenager, that the teenager refused to cut her long fingernails, and her mom said, "Well, I just want her to have fun," and it didn't work out. I have to say, this is kind of off topic a little bit, but if I have a student that I don't use the term fire anymore, I used to. I tell the student if there's some problems, whatever problems that might be, I put them on what I call a growth plan. And I give them 4 lessons or a month to change things. And I have very specific, I write a very, very specific list, especially with a child. I've never really had to do this with an adult, but with a child, so the parents know what's going on. Because sometimes parents stay out in the car during the lesson and they don't always know. So anybody else out there have any, quick things about the business end of starting a student? Stephanie again?
Yeah, me again. After having some families that dragged another kid along that spilled popcorn in my living room, I immediately put it on my studio policy that my home is not child-proofed, so a parent is welcome to accompany a minor student, but please don't bring any additional siblings or additional people on the lesson without checking with me.
Yeah, or food or drink is another one too, sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see anybody else having any ideas about that business section, so I do want to go on. Oh, Kimberly, yes? You're muted, my friend.
I think that's why I like to use the word assessment in our first meeting as opposed to first lesson, because it gives everybody, it gives both parties an out. If it feels like it's not going to be a match, they're not feeling like there's any kind of commitment. But assessment is the word that has surfaced over the years for me to best present what that first meeting time will be.
Yeah, I just saw a note go by that another teacher has a no food or drink policy for their home, which is good. I also have fingernail clippers in my bathroom, and all students are required to wash their hands before they sit down to the harp. Okay.
Dad?
Yes, Marilyn. Okay. Marilyn, you are muted, I think.
I like the washing your hands idea. That's good. Thank you. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. I had a middle school student who must have had her braces tightened that week, and she was playing, and she kept on pressing against the bracelet and then play it. And after the third time, I said, go wash your hands. Now I keep hand sanitizer on my music stand, hanging from my music stand. Okay.
Good idea.
Now let's go to the first lesson. So I believe that this one thing that you do in that assessment lesson, the student's previous musical experience will dictate how they progress and how you focus. If you have any student, adult or child, has come from keyboard, we all know that they're starting at a little bit more advanced level because they're used to doing independent action. They're used to reading bass clef, treble clef, but any instrument. But if you have a student that comes in that's only played trombone, they're going to struggle a little bit to learn treble clef. And also, if you have a student that has a different ability, they learn by ear more than they learn by the printed page, you have to consider that. And of course, if they've had no music whatsoever, again, we know that that is a totally different situation. Mary, would you like to talk about what your thoughts are about that?
No, I have questions about other things, so just go on.
Okay.
I pass.
Okay. Kimberly, how about you?
Well, I think that's why I have several different beginner books.
Okay, we'll talk about the good books.
That's going to be an upcoming topic, but just to have that assessment, just to kind of match them with what book is going to be best. Yeah, the background, of course, and the age is going to make a big difference with that choice. So I wish I could just use one for everybody, but that's not the best for them.
Okay, so we're going to go around, Mary and Kimberly and I are going to go around with talking about what beginner books we like. And I have several each, and then give you guys a chance to talk about what books you like to use. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot of overlap. And I'm going to go first to get it out of the way. First off, you need some sort of journal for taking notes. And there are books out there that are music lesson journals. And I don't know where you get them anymore. There used to be a local shop near my house that I would get that sort of thing from, but it just can be a simple, basic journal notebook. I have gotten in the habit when I have children that the parent writes all the notes so that I can focus on, the student's technique or, whatever. And I'll tell the parent what to write down. And of course they can take notes on anything they want. But I mean, if I have specific things I want remembered, I'll tell them. So the books I have used over the years, and I still like all these books. Fun from the First by Sam Milligan. I really like that one a lot. And it works, I think it works for adults or children. And part of me likes it because it's a fairly inexpensive book. And it's a great way to get started, and they can use it, for a while. And it's an inexpensive book, but it also has some nice little solos to learn. I am a registered Suzuki teacher, so I use the Suzuki Book 1, and I have used that with adults and children because it has some very good teaching concepts. There's some things that I don't necessarily like to use it with every child. I still teach conventional lessons. For adults, I do like the Pamela Bruner book, Play the Harp Beautifully. And I have had students in the past that these are children, the families really want the child to only learn Christian music. And, there's not a lot out there that is solos for the beginner that's Christian or hymns. They're not a lot out there, but there is a book. I don't know if this book is still in print. It's called, and I don't remember the author of the book. It's called Praise the Lord with the Harp. And it's got, hymns, but she's got technical exercises that she has written words or taken passages from the Bible as, like it's a song, but really what it is a technique exercise or an etude. And it's quite a thick book. And I find that a lot of the fingering choices are pretty good and the arrangement choices are pretty good. And then the last one I'll mention is the absolute, my favoriteest exercise book of all times is the Maria Grossi Method for the Harp, the big one. There's like 2 books, but the big fat one. It used to be only in Italian, but I think it's been reprinted in English. Not that you really need much of an English translation. So, Mary, would you like to tell us what your favorite beginner books are?
Yeah, Jan Jennings did do the translation of the Grossi book from Italian to English. Now, I agree with you. I didn't see why there was any reason to translate that. But I think that there's a real difference between people who have really, really strong classical training in harp as a child, and then people who start harp later on, because the people who start harp later on, those concepts, they're not within their physical body. You know, the concepts of technique are not a part of their physicality. They're all up here. And so I can see where people would want the translation. Um, I like, of course, Fun from the First. I like the Betty Parrott Harp book because,
Oh,
it starts out with the scale, and all they have to do is look. You can teach them how to track, go up and go down with one finger, and then as it progresses, those first few pages, it's copycat. The right hand plays something, then the left hand plays the same thing. And then the next song, the right and the left hand play the same thing, but the right hand plays it twice and the left hand plays it once. That type of thing. That I think that's a real intelligent way to kind of progress. That Praise the Lord with the harp, I do remember that. I don't know if that's available anymore. I remember it from years and years ago. We were in contact with the person who wrote that book, and but I agree with you. That's a great book if you can find it.
so that's some advice to you guys that like to publish music. If you are Christian and you'd like to come up with a beginner book that is Christian centered or whatever, I mean, Christian's probably what I've gotten the most. I did have a Mormon student once, and there is a book of Mormon hymns that's been published. I don't know if that's still in print, but there's something like that is there is a need for that type of thing. Anyway, Mary, I'm sorry I derailed you. Go on.
One more thing, I have noticed that because I do teach a lot of piano students, that the Christian-based piano books are actually, I wish that someone would take those and write those for like folk music, because they're very well done. And I don't want to teach all Christian stuff. There are just a few students. So, but yeah, those types of books tend to be quite well done.
Good,
Okay,
good.
I'm done.
Okay, Kimberly, how about you? Tell us about the beginner books you like to use. And you are muted, my friend.
Because I have dogs that are barking here occasionally. Yeah, I'm trying to get my list here because I would kind of like to just go ahead and get that in the chat real quickly for everybody. There's a practice journal that I like that is, I think it's a Glover. You can get it on Amazon. I like it because you can write in the titles and it's got the days of the week, so they can really check off very specifically. There are a lot of practice journals that are out there. There are some that some harpists have put out. This is just a general one. Outside of the music books, I also like this Winning Rhythms book.
Oh, yes. That's good.
And I get almost every one of my students purchase this for rhythm exercises, because as much as we do with technique and playing exercises, I think we've got to separate out the rhythm to reinforce that as well, because it takes a while to get everything coordinated with finding the strings, being able to place the right finger. And as you know, getting things connected, especially when they start working with brackets. But I want to make sure that they're understanding the concepts of the rhythm and an even pulse. So a lot of times I separate that out. I like Julietta Rabin's books a lot. She has the Plucky Bunny series is one for especially young students who, haven't started really reading notes yet. And I think she has several levels that where she starts to teach the note naming to younger students, and then she has her classics at your fingertips, and with that is technique at your fingertips. So those books go together, and she does the technical exercises that correspond with the pieces in her book. So those are favorites of mine. Of Rhyme and Seasons is also a favorite one that I use. The school students that I teach, I go in to teach just quick half-hour private lessons once a week to school students who do not have a harp at home. And this is one that I really like to use. It also reinforces if they're on a different instrument, how to start working with the different clefs the clef that they might not be as familiar with. Fun from the first, of course, Play the Harp Beautifully, both Therese and Mary mentioned, especially for adults. Stephanie Curcio's tutorial series is also a really nice one that encompasses not just playing, but counting and theory as well. And then I also like, this is the second book because I couldn't find my book one, but Bonnie Moore's Adventures at the Harp is also one that I find works really well for some of my like elementary school students.
Somebody in the chat mentioned music theory, which is very important. Just like I love that rhythm book that Kimberly mentioned because I use that all the time. It's really important to get music theory books, at least I feel, that has some information about the harp, because unless you have a keyboard handy, it's hard to communicate that concept of the half steps, because on the keyboard you have all the black and white keys. And so I wish there was more different levels of harp specific theory books. So anybody raise your hand, tell us what music theory. Okay, we got Stephanie, who needs to unmute herself first.
Three's a Chord by Ray Poole.
Okay, Three's a Chord by Ray Poole.
Yeah, which is specifically for harp. It's addressed to either lever harp tuned in 3 flats. And of course, it explains, and the teacher has to explain what that means. But it shows you all the different keys and all the concepts of intervals and how chords are constructed and the circle of fifths of key signatures. I find that very useful. And some students are like, I don't want music theory. It sounds too much like math. I've had students actually confused when I say a fourth or a fifth. They think I'm talking about 25% of something or 20% of something when I say a fourth and a fifth. And let's face it, we use quarter and fourth, etc., to mean multiple fourth finger, fourth interval, etc. So you can see how that could be confusing.
Yeah, it's confusing. But music theory can make grown people cry.
Yeah, but I like to have that handy and have the student get it so it's there, so you can show them the page to review what you've been talking about. And then also for showing music theory, years ago I bought a toy keyboard at Toys R Us. I think Toys R Us closed or something, but nowadays
you can get those. Yeah,
it's a little battery operated keyboard, so I can show them. On harp, you can't see.
Yeah, you can't understand that. Yeah.
E to F is a half step, but D to E is a whole step. So I like having this to show them, because my big piano's in the next room, but this is in my harp lessons room.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. Who else? Anybody else have a music theory that helps with harp, especially with young people, or people who've never had music before? Because we don't want to make we don't want to overwhelm people. No, okay, I gotta show y'all my keyboard.
Oh.
So sorry about that. Okay, did we have anybody else volunteer to talk about music theory, or we're gonna move on? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
How about the Harp Olympics books? I think it's called Harp Olympics.
Yes.
That teaches a little music theory, doesn't it?
I think those are very, very good books, and they're pretty pricey, but however, that's a book that you can use for a long, long, long time.
Okay.
Yeah, those are excellent. Anybody else?
Yeah, that's another one that I like to use, especially with my school students where I'm going into the school, because I try to keep them all kind of on the same pace, on the same curriculum. And I think especially if you're doing like group classes, group beginning classes, that's a really nice one to kind of keep everybody on the same page and progressing.
And it includes technique and theory and solos and etudes. Yeah, it's because maybe it's pricey, but you have everything. You don't have like a multitude of books that they all have to remember to bring or not bring to a lesson. Okay, So one of the things that we do as teachers is, we see the student for 30 minutes, an hour, if we're lucky, every week. I just see somebody saying Kathy Bundock Moore Harp Theory Series. That's good because that is harp. It includes this because harp is confusing compared to piano. But we're teaching the student how to practice in the lesson. And that is, I think that my teacher, as I started when I was 7, and maybe I didn't pay attention, but my teacher really didn't teach me how to practice. I probably wasn't paying attention. It was probably on me. And I did have an adult learner come to me. She'd never had any music before. And we had a lesson. She went home. The next week, she had to cancel her lesson because her arms were so sore. And I was very upset. I was very worried about that. What is she doing? And she had practiced 6 hours in one day because she wanted to get it right. I mean, I appreciate her dedication, but I don't want anybody practicing. No one should be practicing 6 hours a day. I don't care how advanced you are or a beginner. No one should be practicing that much. And yes, I do have an opinion about that. So, Mary, would you like to go first? How do you, in the beginning, like that first lesson, how do you tell them how to practice? Because we also have to worry about getting blisters on fingertips.
I have to admit, I don't have real good luck getting my students to practice. And that's why I want to get other people's opinions. I mean, we have our fun little journal, and I just really have a hard time getting my students to practice. Now, I do have some serious students, and when I do, one thing that we did recently was I said, okay, let's practice less. Let's see how, if you think it's going to take you 15 minutes to learn this, let's get it down to like 7 minutes. Let's practice smart, and they really did progress that way, because we just, I'd say, don't practice this part of the song. You know it already. This is where you get stuck. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there have been times, and I know you're not supposed to stop a kid right while they're playing, but they know my personality. I have a real interesting teaching personality, and I'm not always real kind, but I'm not mean. But I'll say, stop, you have to stop right there, because this is where you need to concentrate. And I mean, there are other things that I do that make the students feel good, but I think I'm not a real conventional teacher. So yeah, I would love to hear other people's ideas on how they teach a kid to practice. I'm done.
So Kimberly, at that first lesson, what do you communicate to that student for practicing at home?
Well, really, I think what I do is we practice in the lesson, and I want to establish the fact that they can have this routine with their practicing. So we do that. It is supervised practicing until I feel like I can tell the student down the road, okay, now apply this to the next section. But I call it a practice formula for them. And for this song, I'll write a 1 and put a dash and put RH, and then 2 LH, 3 hands together. I'll even itemize how many times to play it, because it's in the beginning. I think they need that to latch on to until they develop, oh, do you think you need to try that one more time? Or do you think you've got it and you're ready to go to the next step in the practice formula? So I itemize on the page of the music, sometimes in their assignment book too, but as we know, that doesn't always come out of the bag. So right there on the page, the practice formula that I'm going to have them, but we actually go through it and I write it down as we go through it. So that's, I think, helpful to not only guide them, but reinforce how to approach a piece. And of course, in the beginning, they're not even doing hands together, but I just formulate it for them.
I think that needs to be another seminar in the future of practicing, about getting students to practice. I think we need to have a whole nother session on this, because it's not, we're trying to talk about that first lesson today, but we all have tons of ideas to help motivate our students to practice, or should we say motivate ourselves to practice maybe? Okay, I do want to say one thing I do try to do in that first lesson is play more and talk less. And I'm a talker. And this is one thing that I learned from my Suzuki teacher training is play more, talk less, demonstrate more, talk less. It's really hard for me to do that. Now, if I have a student that has already bought a harp, and they're not renting from me, they've already bought a harp, and I'm not talking anything but a pedal harp, not a pedal harp, but a small harp, whether it is a 22-string harp or a 36-string harp. I ask them to bring it to the first lesson because I want to evaluate how high they're sitting and how they're holding the harp. And I'm going to teach them certain tricks about the harp, about sitting at the harp. And one of them that a colleague of mine does, and I don't think it always works with everybody and every harp. And she tells the student, have the harp between your legs and pull it, like she says something like pull it to your nose and then move it over to the right. And if you move it over too far to the right, it's going to be resting on your arm. And every time you move your arm forward, the harp is going to bob forward. But if it is too close to your head, you're going to do this. And that's not good. And I think we all have a habit. We can all of us can do that. And that can lead to some serious neck problems. And also the weight and the height of the harp depends and the size of the body dictates how close the harp will be to your chair and how far away it will be to the chair. And Kimberly, do you have any thoughts about that harp at the lesson, that first lesson?
From the very beginning, when they sit behind the harp, that they feel what that balancing point is in the harp, and then we go straight back, and then they hold their arms out, and if the harp feels like it's going to fall forward, then we adjust, or either our stool or our bottoms, not the harp. And so from the very beginning, they're learning to hold the harp with both hands and find the balancing point, sense that, because when they go back home, they're going to have to find that without me helping them.
Right. That's why I want them to bring that harp to that first lesson.
Right. We get the stool adjusted. So, and if they're on my stool, I'll measure the height and send that home with the parents so that they have that sense. But yes, and angling it towards the right shoulder. I also sometimes talk about the parts of the harp. And so we talk about the strings, and this is the body, and this looks like a swan's neck, and the crown is my favorite part up at the top of the harp, and just so that they kind of have a chance to see the feet and the knee block. And why do we call that a knee block? Well, can you bend your leg, and do you see it kind of looks like your knee when your knee's bent? So, we kind of have fun naming some of the parts, but right off the bat, they're learning how to find and pull the harp back and put it forward again correctly.
Yeah, and when I have the students now, I know that there are other pedal harpists that do things differently, but this is the way I was taught, and so what works for me. But for the pedal harp, as Kimberly said, you have to find that natural center of balance. But I was taught to rest my pedal harp, on my knees. But if you have to do a bunch of furious pedaling, you might put the weight against your shoulder while you're doing that. That doesn't apply necessarily with the smaller harps, the 36 and under amount of strings, because again, of the size of the harp and the balance. It doesn't always apply. So a small harp might actually be resting against my body, but it's a lightweight instrument. It's not going to cause muscle strain. Mary, did you have any thoughts about that, getting the student adjusted to the harp at that first lesson?
Well, okay, I have a question. I guess I'm throwing you off here. What do you do when you've had a kid that has played the harp without a teacher before, and they come to the lesson and they're just playing fast and furiously, and you're like, whoa, wait. How would you handle something like that?
Kimberly, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'm always really sensitive to not squelching enthusiasm. So I would give them, a little bit of space and rope to let them show you what they do. And then work with them gently on either something new as opposed to something that they already have habits over. Kind of starting fresh with some fresh approach and some fresh ideas with something new, as opposed to going back and trying to rework something that they've already done a certain way. Because I don't want to be like, you're doing it all wrong, even though
Yeah, we don't want
they
to
might.
crush their spirit. We don't want to crush their
Even though they
spirit.
might. Yeah. There needs to be a little bit of for me, but I tend to come from, I'm teaching mostly middle school, some elementary, some high school. I haven't taught at the college level for several years. There's a different approach. So my kids I'm into nurturing their love for the instrument and wanting them to just have fun and know that they'll learn along the way. My more serious high school students and my more serious college students, I would have a little different approach. So Mary, my approach would depend somewhat on the age of that child and where they are in their level.
I also, I agree. I don't want, I mean, I joke, I don't want to crush anybody's spirit, but really, I want to tell them, I would be telling them what they have done right. I see that you're doing this. This is a really great way to do that. I'm going to be positive first, but then I'm not going to use the word but, by the way, don't ever use the word but. And I'm going to tell them, here is one thing that I want you to consider working on. And I agree with Kimberly that it's very difficult to try to fix a problem in a piece they've worked on for a long time, but I will still come up with one point that they can work on to improve or to consider, because I do believe in giving students the illusion of free will. So anybody else have any thoughts about that sort of thing? I saw another theory book. I mean, another book come popping up. Oh shoot, I've already forgotten the name of it.
A thumbs up.
Thumbs Up. Yeah, that's another good book.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Good one. Yeah.
Especially for adults.
Yeah, there it is. Levers Up, Thumbs Up. Yes, because that's the lever harp version one. That is a good book. I forgot about that one. Yeah. So Mary had asked me our subject for today, what to teach at that first lesson, came up because last week Mary Radspinner asked me about how do I teach the students how to put their fingers on the strings. I actually don't spend a lot of time at the first lesson. And pretty much I just want them to use their second finger. My biggest thing on the first lesson is finger action. And again, this comes from my training, which is what works for me, maybe not for everyone, but I work on finger action at the first lesson to have complete range of motion. And the phrase I use is, the terms I use is, if you were to play golf or baseball, you are taught to hit the ball and you follow through. You don't just hit the ball and you stop. You have to follow through. And also this is also can help reduce the chance of repetitive stress injury because you're using the full range of motion instead of playing like this. But this is how I was taught to have a good tone and to stay relaxed. But I don't spend a lot of time because it's like, I'm trying to focus on limiting the amount of information and the amount of talking that I'm going to do. And they will ask me sometimes, and I will say, no, we'll cover that when it happens. So if you'll be patient with me, I'll show you my way of showing a student how to put their hands on the strings. First thing I do is I talk about a thing that's called the position of function. And if a surgeon operates on your hand and they bandage you up, they put you in this position of function. And I asked a surgeon who is a harpist about this once, years and years and years ago. And she confirmed for me this is absolutely true. So if you were to put your whole forearm on the tabletop and you put your fingertips perpendicular to the tabletop, you see the angle of my wrist? This is called the position of function. This is the angle that is right for my hand, my arm. I have very long fingers. Yours may not be as sharp of an angle. And so if you can maintain that when you play the harp, that is the healthiest way to have an angle of your hand. Now that, again, this is how I was taught. Actually, in this, if you ever look at the Salzedo method for the harp, Salzedo originally taught push your wrist in as far as it will go. And decades later, Lucille Lawrence changed that to have a more gentle angle. Another thing I was taught was not to rest the forearm on the harp, the right forearm on the harp. Other people may do something differently. However, sometimes if on my pedal harp, I was playing something really fast and intricate, I might rest the side of my hand just to brace myself. But I don't want my students resting their forearms to cut off their tendons in circulation in their hand. But I don't worry too much about that at that first lesson. But Mary, so I'm going to show this. I usually demonstrate this on the red string, and I tell my students, I make sure they know 1, 2, 3, 4, the numbering of the fingers, and we don't play with the pinky because it's too short. So I have them put 4, 3, 2, sort of next door to each other, maybe not touching, using their fingernails, and to put their thumbnail on the string. I hope you guys can see that, okay? And my technique, I was taught to keep my knuckles rounded. Maybe different for how you were taught. And so to slide the thumb up, point it up to the ceiling. So now the next step is I keep my thumb on the C. I move 2, 3, 4 down to the B. I'm going to use my fingernails. Keep 2 on the B, move 3, 4 down to the A. Keep 3 on the A, move 4 down to the G. And that way, if they do that, they can replicate that hand position at home on their own. Now, if they were to pluck the strings, then we would move off of the nail and onto the fingertips. Again, this is the technique I was taught. Yours may be different. And so now I have a rounded palm. My knuckles are all rounded. My thumb is high with a big space, and I have a diagonal wrinkle right here, which is what I was taught. And if you look at it from above, it's a sort of a C shape. So Mary, that's what I was taught by Lucille Lawrence. And Ray Poole teaches this. Ray Poole he hasn't done videos in years. He may have a video on his YouTube channel that shows this. I think I haven't done videos in a long time on YouTube either. I might have a video on my YouTube channel that shows how to do this. Okay. I don't know if that helps, Mary, but.
That helps a lot. Well, and I get that, and that's beautiful. That works great. What do you do when you have an adult student that plays like well, okay, so
Palms to string.
yeah, it's like
The palms are facing.
the angle of the hand is like this instead of like this. And so what that does is it creates where the thumb is, and so many teachers say keep your thumbs high, and so many adults think that means you stick it up in the air to the point where it's painful. And I say no, it's just get your thumb out of the way of the rest of your fingers. But what do you do when these adults insist on playing like this? And then when they play the thumb, it's got such a long way to go, to get over there, and they can't play fast that way. There's no, it really impedes their ability to play.
Okay, Mary, I have some ideas about this. I want to step back on this. I have a caveat. Adult students, by the way, frequently have arthritis, including myself. We don't want to do anything that's going to cause pain. Okay, so sometimes having a high thumb, even the way I was taught, can be painful for them. Don't want to do that. Now, Louise Trotter had a thing that she used. She said, imagine you're shaking someone's hand. If you shake someone's hand at waist level, which you can't see on my camera, their fingers are pointed down and their thumb is up, but their fingers are pointed down. And so they're not like with the fingertips horizontal. It is a slight angle. So that I thought that I always liked that, how she said that you could shake somebody's hand.
You.
Yeah.
So what I do before they even put their fingers on well, first of all, I just get them to play some glissandos, because they want to hear they want to play. They want to hear what the harp sounds like. They want to make the harp sing. So and it doesn't matter to me really how they do. I tell them to use their thumbs going down. We try it with the right hand. We try it with the left hand. We go up and down, and they're all happy because they're feeling the vibrations and they're hearing all these wonderful sounds coming out that they produced. The next thing that I do is I work with their closed positions. So I have them set their hands on their legs with the palm up, and we do what I call our finger sit-ups. So we hold our hands flat, and then I have them point their fingers up to the sky, because I don't want them just plucking like this either. So I want to start working on that muscle memory right away on what that should feel like. So they're relaxed, and I said, okay, put your fingers straight up and now fold them in and have your thumbs. And we do 10 finger sit-ups up, and I break it down into 2 steps until they start to get that closed position. Can you see your fingernails? And again, it's like working with just pedals, or working with just the right hand, or stepping away and counting and clapping your rhythm. This is just working with muscle memory so that they can feel that this is where they need to go. So I tell them, I'm like, you can do this anywhere. You don't need the harp. Just do 10. I don't want them to do too many either. I had one girl that was like, oh, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna slow that down. It's really fun, but let's kind of slow it down. And I took her back down to doing it in 2 steps just to slow her down. But to feel that, then I talk about flipper fingers. So I usually ask them, like seals and fish, and they have the flippers like this. So in the beginning, I do have them have their fingers together to feel it as a group. If I have a student who has a dance background, especially ballet, I'll refer to first position with their elbows. Or I'll be like, the harp is made of wood. Have you ever hugged a tree? Because you can pretend you're hugging the harp, hugging the tree. It has that roundness to it. So when I work with the flipper fingers, they're going to just put their first, and I demonstrate too, their first finger, second finger on C. And we try not to play across the tips, but point it down and on the corner. And at this point, they're usually in this position. And so their first week is to just go up. If I've got an older student, up and down. Oh, let's try this with the left hand with our flipper fingers. And then, so I'm not even using an exercise book at this point. I don't want them having to look at music and see what they're supposed to do and then try to figure it out. So they do their scale, single note scale. Then when they're ready, I add thirds, and they do that because they've already got the second finger action. Then we add the third finger. So I'm just going up the C scale with C, starting C on the bottom. So I do those 3 steps before I do anything else. If they're doing great, then, oh, let's try hands together. Can you do that hands together? So I've been pretty successful with establishing pretty good position in the beginning just by using that.
I use the analogy of the finger action. I say, capture a butterfly. And if you play like this, if you close like this, the butterfly is going to get away. If you close like this, what's going to happen? You're going to crush your butterfly, because I want them to I want the full range of motion, but I want it to be relaxed. So they capture a butterfly and they put the roof on the house.
Mm-hmm.
And some teachers say, close the toilet seat, but put the roof on the house is nice because it gives you that little point. And Kimberly, you talked about how you have the clothes like this. I tell them to do it if they're in the car, and every time their mom drives, they stop at a stoplight, do it 10 times, both hands. even every time you sit down to go to the bathroom, you don't have anything else to do, right? Because we're not on our phones. Do it 10 times. And just to get them thinking about doing it often. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'm Suzuki teacher trained and certified. And the first Twinkle one is about finger action. Articulation is what they call it. And we have a little toy that we send them home with, and they're castanets. We make it out of 2 layers of fun foam, and we glue a little washer to it, and we punch holes and have elastic. And we have different sizes. That's for a littler hand. And it is just a practice thing that they use briefly. They don't use it forever. And it's little castanets, and they have to. The first twinkle is Mississippi hot dog. So I will send this home with them on the first lesson, and they are to practice. And they have to open and close like that. And it is it gives them direct feedback for when they are at home, because I do emphasize to students, I'm your teacher 30 minutes a week. Who is the teacher the rest of the week? And it's the student, because I want them to be focused on what they're actually doing. We want instructions to make the castanets. Well, I have to ask for permission from my teacher to see if I can do that. But I mean, if she says it's fine, I'll be glad to show y'all how to make the castanets. It's real easy to do. So I know that we're getting off a little bit. We're talking about the 5th or the 6th or 8th lesson, but I am trying to stay more on the first lesson. Oh, one last thing I wrote myself a note about. And again, this comes from my Suzuki teacher training. If you've ever looked at the Suzuki book, the first time decades ago that I looked at these Suzuki books, I thought, that's crazy. We don't play like that in that book one. We don't do that. And when I took my training, I was like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. So the first half a dozen pieces, it's the same notes in treble clef and bass clef. You never play them hands together like that. And what you do is you start with the left hand. Most of us are right hand dominant. Mm-hmm. And we'll just automatically, some exercise technique thing, we'll start it with the right hand. And therefore, because most of us are right hand dominant, when you do the same thing in the left hand, your left hand wants to play at the same speed that your right hand does, but it's a little clumsier, so you've made it harder. So you do the more challenging hand first, whatever exercise it is, and work on that. Another thing that's really great for everyone is it is easier to watch that left hand. You're not having to crane your hand over here. And lastly, for a child, they might play at an octave higher, so they don't have to reach as far, but it really is important to be able to watch their hand. So that's a lot of information. Mary or Kimberly, do you have any more thoughts about that?
I think the only other thing that I'll throw in, just because we didn't mention it, but it is mentioning the obvious, is the first lesson we talk about the names of the strings on the harp and finding the reds. And once I've taught them this flipper finger position, then we'll start plucking all the red strings, all the C's, and we'll spell some words. Well, with your left hand, let's spell dad. Let's see if we can figure out where D-A-D is. And so I do some string finding as well, and while reinforcing the plucking with the second finger.
Yeah, and that reminds me of something that Mary talked about once, and I actually had a student it was only because Mary had talked about this a long time ago that I wasn't totally surprised. Play the highest red string, and they went up here to play the red string at the highest part of the harp. And my mind doesn't work that way, but it was because Mary had talked about how to being a student that did that once. I totally understood. So that is a good time when play all the red strings, Kimberly. That's a good chance to talk about the highest one and the medium one and the low one, to understand the mapping of the harp. Mary, any thoughts about that?
Well, Frank Boltz had a really good workshop one time he gives a workshop called the Geography of the Harp, where he has red, just and it was for adult students, but adult students they glam on to one note, and they're so afraid to get away from that one note. So just to get them to have the freedom of moving the arms around. I like that geography of the harp, and then play black, 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 black. I think that's really good. And I just want to make a comment. I think that sometimes when we have these discussions like we're having now, it's kind of a free flow thing. And I think it's really great. And I'm just wondering if we should have more of these types of conversations rather than like a strict program, because I'm learning so much just with this free flow of ideas, and I'm loving this. And I have a student at 4:30, and I'm going to use it on him.
I definitely think we need to do a seminar on guiding our students with practicing and what tools we use, because I have dice, I have rubber stamps, I have stickers, and I have all sorts of stuff, and I'd love to share that. And I think all of us have things, the mental preparation for practicing and stuff. So any final thoughts, because we're just about out of time? Any final thoughts, guys? I hope y'all got something out of this. And so this will be recorded, and in the recording, can you read the chat, like with the names of books that everyone has recommended? Will that be possible in the future?
I can make a follow-up. I don't think that that's available on a recording, but I can send people the follow-up of the chat, which I can print out.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mary. Yeah, I think I don't see anybody coming up with more thoughts. So I think we're going to wrap it up now. And by the way, teachers, if you have ideas of things that you would like help with, that you would like information, please send Mary that information, and we can make plans to help, because this helps all of us, I think.
And then another thing, I know that there are a lot of really good teachers who are on this webinar, and I would love to hear your ideas too. And maybe get some of you involved in the next discussion and have a panel of 5 or 6 of us or whatever. I'll keep my mouth shut and have you guys be on the panel. I'm fine with that.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to say goodbye and farewell to everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Kimberly. And thank you, everybody that contributed today. And just being here is really important, because it's nice to us to have community and be able to share this information, because we all want to get better and improve ourselves and be better teachers and help our students learn to play this instrument we love. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Happy harping.
Thanks, everybody.